In this fourth video of my series on the passive voice in Latin, I will discuss the future tense. If you have followed the previous 3 videos in this series, I hope you will agree that there is not very much to be said. However, for the sake of completeness, I will say it. Here are the 4 parts of a Latin verb: the root, the connecting vowel, the tense marker, and the personal ending. But since I assume you have watched the previous 3 videos in this series, I see no reason to repeat now what I said in those videos. Let us then move to the future tense, both active and passive. I will start with the future tense in the active voice, and the verb I will take is I shall carry. Porto, portabo. There it is. Notice the presence of bi, or sometimes just b, or sometimes bu, but notice the presence of be plus something as your tense marker. Obviously, you must make sure to distinguish this from the imperfect tense, but there is the future active tense. I shall carry, or I will carry. Let us now look at the future passive tense. I shall be carried. Portabor. There it is. And yet again, if you have watched the previous videos in this series, you should immediately see a pattern. You should immediately see that there is nothing new to learn here. Notice the standard pattern by which the passive voice is derived from the active voice. O becomes or, S becomes ris, T becomes tur, mus becomes mur, tis becomes mini. Since I've spoken several times already about this, I see no point in repeating myself. And nt becomes untur. So once again, with the exception of the u singular, ris, where the r is not at the end of the verb but inside it, and with the very strange exception of the u plural, mini, which is a complete outlier, the general pattern of the passive voice is that you put an r at the end of the verb. Whether the r is added by itself, or with a preceding vowel, or whether the r replaces another consonant, depends on the person. But let's compare the future passive with the present passive. There they are, side by side, at some distance, I suppose. Look how completely regular they are. Look indeed at how relatively uninventive they are. There is the present passive, I am carried, and there is the future passive, I shall be carried. The main difference is simply one of tense marker. None for the present passive, some kind of be for the future passive. And let's compare both with the imperfect passive, I was being carried. Again, what more is there to say? Look at it for yourself. The tables speak for themselves. The distinguishing mark of the passive voice is the addition, somewhere in the verb, usually at the end, of an R. Learn that, and you really do have the passive voice. Let's compare these passives with their corresponding actives. There they are. And if you pause the video and look at these, I have no doubt that you will learn more for yourself than by listening to any repeated commentary of mine. All I would add is that the future tense in Latin is a bit of a nuisance. There isn't one form. This being so, let me show you a table which gives the future tense of all the regular conjugations in Latin. The first 6 rows give you the future tense in the active voice. The bottom 6 rows, marked in red, give you the future passive. Once you get past the slight irritation of 2 or perhaps 3 different future tenses, you will see that whatever the particular form of the future tense in the active voice, the future passive involves exactly the same addition of r's at the end or inside the verb, plus of course that outlying u plural mini. So there is the future tense in the passive voice in Latin. And here as ever is what you need to learn. O becomes or, S becomes ris, T becomes tur, mus becomes mur, tis becomes mini, nt becomes untur. I would like to say more about this. Sadly, or perhaps not sadly, I can think of no more at the moment to say. That is the future passive. And I repeat, so long as you have watched the previous videos in this series, there is absolutely nothing new here, and certainly nothing surprising. In my next video, I will discuss the rather different forms that you will encounter in the perfect passive tenses. For the moment, though, thank you for watching this video.